Okay, hi, and welcome to the first video for our War Poetry unit of work. Um, Basically, this video is an introduction to the unit, but more so it's an introduction to the concepts that we'll be studying this term. It is also the first video that I've created, and I've actually tried to do this about 30 times now, and I keep laughing or making a mistake. So I'm just going to keep going this time, no matter what happens. So let's see how we go. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss and define the three key concepts that are going to help us with a deep understanding of the text that we're going to study this term. So the three key concepts that we need to know about are context, then we've got connotation, imagery, and symbolism. It's the second one. And the last one that we've got there is perspective. So three key concepts: context, connotation, imagery, and symbolism, and perspective. And in this video, we are actually going to be learning pretty much exactly what those terms mean, or giving an introduction to those terms. The reason that I want to do this with you straight out is that I want to make what you need to know, understand, and do visible from the very beginning. Okay, I want you to get what you should know. I want you to get what you should be able to understand, and I want you to get, in bunny ears, what you need to do throughout this unit of work. So it's about understanding, basically. So first up, we've got context. Start off with the wordy definition, and then we'll go on and we'll try and break it down a little bit. So context, what is it? Context is the range of personal, social, historical, cultural, and workplace conditions in which a text is both responded to and composed. So let's take a breath for a minute. Context refers to all the different factors that act upon composers and responders that impinge on meaning, or that affect the meaning, or that maybe create a specific meaning. So let's begin right here. The factors that act upon the composers. Who are the composers? The composers are the people that create the text, whether they be the authors, the artist, the illustrator, the director, the painter. Okay, they are the person that has created the text. They are the composer. So that's one of the terms that you need to know. So context refers to the factors acting upon those people, the people that have created the text, the composers. But context also refers to the factors that are acting upon the responders. Who are the responders? The responders are us, the people that are engaging with the text, the audience, the reader. So it's the factors that are acting upon both of those people, and how the factors that how these factors are actually affecting the meaning that's being created or shaped. Basically, to understand the context, we need to look beyond the text. So we're not just looking at the specific poem, we're looking at the context of the poem. We're looking beyond the text, and we're considering two different things, okay? We're considering the world in which it was produced, and we're looking at the world when it was of its reception. So we're looking at the world then, we're looking at the world now. This goes beyond historical and cultural background. You need to consider some further things. You need to consider the personal, the situational, the social, the literary, the cultural and historical environments of both, again, the responder and the composer. Let's go back to a few of these words here. So if we're going to consider the personal, what are we considering? Can we think about some of the ideas? Maybe the family background, maybe your gender, maybe your ethnicity. How are those things affecting the creation or the consideration of the text? Then let's go here to social. What's happening in society? Are there specific movements that are happening in society? What's happening in that environment? Culturally, what's happening culturally or historically? Okay, we're dealing with war poetry here. So what historical environment were these texts created? Did these people go to war? Were these people experienced on the battlefield? Were they anti-war? Did their family members die? Okay, there's lots of questions that we need to ask so we can understand the text and we can understand how this composer has come to this. A major point that we need to just take from this video is just the fact that different contexts can have an effect on the meanings and values of similar content. So I've been talking a lot. I've already been recording for 5 minutes, which is not what I intended to do. So we're just going to move on a little bit quicker. This last bit, I really want you to, kind of blows my mind a little bit. So, however, even when all these factors are taken into consideration, complete understanding of the effect of context on a text is impossible. Oh my goodness. Because we cannot tell where context ends and where the text begins. Our own knowledge of the world is filtered through the lens of our own context, colouring all we see. So it's very difficult for us to not be biased. This is a frame of reference that is almost impossible to escape. So all we can really do is recognise that it's there. I'm going to pause the film. It's going a bit crazy there. I'm going to pause this video in a minute and we're going to answer these questions. So we've got what is a composer and what is a responder? Hopefully I've gone through that. Why do you think it is important for a study of war poetry to consider both the world in which it was produced and the world of its reception? So you need to consider there how views may have changed or be different. So are the views different on war now than they were then? And lastly, I want you to think about your own context. How could this impinge upon your response to war poetry? Okay, how could this affect how you respond to war poetry? Okay, dot points, and I'm going to go quicker now, so I'm going to sound like a bit of a Speedy Gonzales. So you're learning in terms of context. You need to know that your perceptions of the world are filtered through your own context. That's a major biggie. Context shapes language, forms, and features of text. So the way that they're presented, the way that they're written in this case. Language, forms, and features of text inscribe values and attitudes in their representations of people, information, and ideas. Values and attitudes. And text may be responded to and composed differently in different contexts. So let's move on to the next slide and the next, and it's a big one too, so I don't even know how long this is going to go for. Okay, so we're moving on to connotation, imagery, and symbolism. So what is it? It's the creation of meaning through connotation, through imagery, and through symbolism. I'm pretty sure, especially if you've been in my class before, that you will know what imagery is and you hopefully will know what symbolism is. But you may not have heard of this word, connotation. So, connotation, the associated or secondary meaning of a word or expression in addition to explicit or primary meaning. So I've just gotten onto this site here and it's talking about the importance of connotation, but it's got some examples that might help us with our understanding. So understanding a word's literal, denotative, and suggestive connotative meanings is important for every speaker and writer. There are certain circumstances when you might want to deliberately use a word that carries less than a positive connotation. However, you may want to avoid mistakenly using a word with a negative or misleading connotation. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's talk about these. We're not going to go through all of them, but there are groups of words here that are used to describe people, and it asks you for the connotation of the words. So we've got childlike, youthful, childish, and young. Let's just look at that one first. So if we think about the connotation of the words childish and childlike, I think that really implies that someone is immature. Like if you're like a childlike kind of person, you're pretty immature. If you think about the idea of youthful though, like people might say to me, Miss Diaz, you're very youthful. It may mean that I'm maybe lively and energetic. So if someone said, "Oh, you're very childlike, Miss Diaz," maybe a bit of a negative connotation because it's saying that, "Oh, you're a bit immature." But if you're saying, "Oh, you're looking very," maybe you're presenting as very youthful, then I'm very lively and I'm very energetic. So that's the connotation. So that's just a very brief connotation exercise. But let's have a look here. Words and images can signify more than what they denote, extending us beyond their literal everyday meanings to understand and experience one thing in terms of another. This extension of meaning may, through connotation, evoke associated feelings, or through imagery and symbol, lay down new traces of images, sounds, senses, and ideas. Okay, so this is very, very important when we're looking at poetry. Okay, in imagery, we're using figurative language to represent objects, actions, and ideas in such a way that it appeals to our physical senses. And of course, there's going to be symbolism throughout the text as well. Generally, it is an object representing another to give it an entirely different meaning that is much deeper and more significant. I'm not going to go into this in that much more detail because I want you to have a look at these questions and then maybe we can talk about this further afterwards and you can read through this at your own pace. So we're going to have a look. What does can signify more than what they denote mean? Okay, it says words and images can signify more than what they denote. And then number 2 says, why do you think these 3 literary terms are so important in this particular unit of work? Of this concept, you're going to understand that attention to imagery can give rise to subtle and complex meanings. The emphasis on imagery in a text varies according to its audience and its purpose. Understanding the effect of imagery and symbol varies according to personal experience, social and cultural context, and attention to patterns of imagery invite readings that are more cohesive. Let's move on to the next slide. The last 2 slides, actually. We've got perspective. Okay, perspective. You've hopefully all heard this word before. What is it? It's a particular attitude towards or way of regarding something. So it's your point of view. It's a lens through which we learn to see the world. It shapes what we see and the way we see it. The lens can clarify, magnify, distort, or blur what we see. In this way, perspective provides a dynamic basis for the relationship between composer, text, and responder. Importantly, perspective includes the values that the responder and the composer bring to a text. So your values, the values that you bring to the text, and the values that the composer brought to the text when they were creating it. In a text, these values are expressed and or implied through the composer's language and structure, which may position the reader to accept them. Okay, so we need to have a look at we need to really dissect the values or the perspective that are coming through in the text that we're going to study this term, and have a look at how the composer has structured their language to try and express their specific or particular perspective. There's only one question that I want to ask you in regards to perspective, and it's just a quite general question, and it is, what is your current perspective on war? I'm going to talk about in this video today is your learning in regards to perspective. So we want you to learn that the world and text may be seen through particular frames, that views of the world may be exploited for particular purposes, and that readers and viewers may be positioned to accept particular views. And that's it for my first video. Hopefully, and this is a big hope, None of them will be like this ever again because I know it has been very confusing and long-winded. So let's hope that I get better at this as we go through this different way of learning, kind of like a flipped classroom again. That's it. Thank you.